Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. The Composers Conference has always been a pretty important part of my professional life on one side, but also my personal life. Like these are my friends who I'm working with every day. So uh, I love being a part of it. I grew up in southern Wisconsin in a town just southwest of Madison, and I basically took to music from a very young age. My parents had a rule that all of their children, and that goes back a few generations, like all of their children had to take piano lessons. It was required. And for my brother, who is also now a very successful musician in his own right, would attest, he did not take to the piano lessons very kindly, and was constantly crying at the seat of the piano as the timer ticked away for his 30 minutes that he had to practice. And I seem to enjoy it. But I actually started, my first instrument was violin.
Uh-huh.
And I studied Suzuki violin. I think I started at age 3, whenever Suzuki starts. And
Young.
I think that's when it was. And the instruments are basically like Christmas ornaments, you know, yeah, that you just play. And I loved discovering, I think a few years after I switched to piano from the violin, that my first violin was actually Cracker Jack box,
Oh yeah.
with a ruler taped to it.
Mhm.
And it was like one of the most delicious discoveries of my youth. So I started out with violin. I shortly moved to piano. I remember the end of my violin training was when I tried to do vibrato, and in a three-dimensional plane, when your bow is moving this way and your fingers have to move this way, that was a little bit much for my brain. So piano made a lot of sense. You hit the key and it sounds the pitch. So I played piano for a while with a teacher Vicky Jenks, who was also a fantastic percussionist and played in like the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra. So I remember being at a piano lesson once, and the marimba was next to me, and I think I remember tapping on one of the keys once, which I was promptly disciplined for. But I remember that being something I was really drawn to. I went to school at Lawrence University, which is a small liberal arts college up in Wisconsin, which has grown to have quite a bit of notoriety uh, in the past few years and before. And then I took a few years off, hung around, slummed in southern Wisconsin, and then uh, and then I moved out to New York City, studied at the Juilliard School for my master's and doctoral degrees, and then started teaching in higher ed. So I started teaching at Northern Colorado, which is in a city called Greeley. And just recently, I just finished my first year teaching at Ithaca College here in Ithaca, New York. For me, I was never somebody who really set very clear goals for myself. I've always felt like there was a constant churning, and if I could just keep feeding the fire, that I would have experiences that I would want to have. And that's a lot of trust for like a 18-year-old to have in oneself. But that's the direction that I've been going. And it's given me a lot of really cool opportunities and maybe some weird experiences in my life. But I feel like something that's been a constant for me is is a sense of honesty in the art that I try to make. And sometimes I'm playing solo concerts, and sometimes they're pitched percussion, or sometimes I'm uh, scraping a bass drum or something. But no matter what, I feel like there's a sense of honesty. And one of my friends who actually lives out on the West Coast there, Carrie O'Brien, um, uh, coined a term of coarseness,
Mhm.
that like, of course this person is playing that tree branch. And I always loved that feeling, and I wanted to embody that.
Mhm.
Uh, so what helps me when I'm creating is uh, is that I'm always in development of myself. And it sounds super corny now that I say it out loud, but it's how I feel. Um,
Mhm.
that I always feel like if I want my playing to get better, or if I want my teaching to get better, and I'm being completely honest through those vehicles, that the only way for those things to get better is for me to get better as a person.
Mhm.
So there's been, I try, of course, I try to do like eat the right things and exercise regularly and, do mindfulness exercises and things. But also, I think of it in the way that I interact with people, and
Sure.
all of that filters in to the, like the, I don't know, the generosity of
Mhm.
artistic creation that we have. So I feel like honesty has always been something that's important to me. I remember talking to Mark Applebaum once about, I think it was about his piece Aphasia, because there's been so many different performances of some theatrical pieces, but he had an interesting uh, mindset that he may or may not still have, which is um, he wants the premiere of the work to be as close to his vision of the piece as possible.
Mhm.
And then after that, he said, all right, it's all yours. And then how the piece develops in these unique ways, uh, and why somebody would take on a piece, kind of like what you were saying, that like if somebody asks you for a piece and maybe there's some financial transaction because of it, there's some level of obligation, or if it's like a grant or something, there might be some level of obligation for them to play the piece. But it's interesting to think, when there's no obligation in that way, how does a piece survive and develop?
Mhm. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about a non-musical experience that intersects with your life as a musician, how it might impact your life as a musician.
Um, yeah, sure. Well, I guess I mean, I can always say that personal interactions will always influence our music making, and for better and worse. Uh, but something um, that I remember thinking about, or I remember being a direct correlation to my music making that was not in a practice room or with an instrument, was I remember doing a deep dive on Steve Reich's drumming. Um, and I think this year is the 50th anniversary of drumming, by the way.
Mhm.
But I was preparing drumming to play with Dan Druckmann. We did it with the Juilliard Percussion Ensemble, Colin Curry at Carnegie. And so phasing was like kind of something that was on my brain, and we were working on it really hard in the practice room, like, okay, it has to be perfect. And I remember that I was out taking a jog around the Jackie Onassis Reservoir there in Central Park, and I remember running alongside a stranger, and our feet were just slowly phasing as I was running by, because I have a little longer gait and they had a little shorter gait. And the way that our feet were working, and it was a naturally occurring phase of running feet. And I remember uh, going from not realizing what was happening to the realization of this is happening, to the immediate like control of your brain, where you say, okay, don't make sure that make sure that it's right. And it's the musical control freak of my brain that was trying to take control. And then I remember that moment of letting go
Mhm.
and letting my feet just be what they are, and that person's feet are going to be what they are, and then how they naturally worked. And all of a sudden, like there was this kind of epiphany-ish type moment of how I'm going to feel when I play that music. And then maybe on a deeper level, like to me, what that music might be more about.
When did you first come to the conference? I was just wondering.
I was wondering this myself, and I think it was the summer of 2015.
Okay.
It could have been the summer of 2014, but I know that a lot of my friends there were already playing in the conference before, and the person who was before me was Pablo Riepi, who's a New York City staple of all things education and performance. And he was playing in the conference with Matt Gold, and then Pablo, I think, ended up deciding that the conference wasn't going to work for him over the summer, and Jim and I had worked together in Talia a few times and some Ninmi things, and it was, yeah. So I guess it was one of the great invites of my professional life.
Great. I'm glad you feel that way.
I do, and I'll tell you the sappy part is that a lot of these people I knew before, just from playing around New York City, and they're friends of mine, and Lois Martin, who's our violist, and we used to spend Thanksgivings together, like way before she and I started playing together. So having Lois there, it makes it feel kind of like, well, the way Thanksgiving feels, right?
Oh, that's nice.
And and then a lot of my friends, and then I've also met a lot of new people there, which is always fantastic. And without exception, they've been fantastic colleagues. But I will tell you, and this is honest, and you may want to cut this out, but the honest truth is, my first year at the conference,
Yeah.
In the middle of maybe the first week or toward the end of the first week, I thought, why are we doing this? Like this, I thought I didn't understand what the conference really was and what it meant to people. So I thought, like, are people really coming to this to have us play their pieces? And like, like we just kind of, is this really is this worthwhile for people? And then I took a step back after the first week, and I realized that, like, what a gem this conference actually is. And so I mean, strictly speaking, on like a financial side, you come to this do you know how much it costs to get 21 people and a conductor in a space with great microphones to play your music? So on a financial thing, like, whatever you're paying to be a participant at this festival, it's not as much as it would be to get these people in the room together to play a sinfonietta piece that you've written at the level that these folks play at. So I thought about that, and I thought, okay, right, I understand. But but of course, the thing that kind of hits me every year, and it's probably going to hit really hard this year, is that the people that we see every year who are the members of the staff ensemble are like an outgrowth of my family. I mean, some of these people I only get to see once a year.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, because like one of my great friends, Jeff, lives in Malaysia, and I don't always make it out to Malaysia in the middle of the year. But seeing these folks makes me feel like everything's fine and it's all right. And playing music together with them is just so fulfilling. And on that side, so there's like the kind of like, come on home, the water's great. You know, we've got your warm cup of tea for you, Mike. Come on in. And so there's that side of the conference that's really an important structural part of my musical making. And then there's also the part which is almost always we get new composer fellows every year. And everyone comes with a completely new background and a new style of music and a new way of interacting with people and new ideas of how, uh, at least on my side, like the percussion instruments work or notation is meant to function, and that new spice of what's happening right now, who are the people who are making this creation, and then knowing those people and working with them means a lot
Sure.
to that. So there's these two sides of it. The like, come on home, we've got a cardigan waiting for you, and the hey, have you seen what's over there on the horizon? Like
Yeah.
this is the thing that's about to happen. I have a lot of like really specific memories of different pieces
Hmm.
that we've had. Um, but maybe the because when I think back on the conference, if somebody just said composers conference, what are you thinking about? I think after concert hangs.
Oh, I like that.
We spend the first half of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Hmm.
um, working on repertoire. And then that feeling of like, we got to learn this piece right now and it has to be, and we only have a finite amount of time and we got to get a good recording. And somehow it always sneaks by and we get a great recording of these pieces.
Yeah.
Um, but then the feeling of, okay, that recording was fantastic and we want to celebrate these composers
Uh-huh.
and have a chance. And a lot of times the interaction that we have with the composers as like a large ensemble is uh, we show up and Matt and I are setting up the instruments really quick and the people are setting up the chairs, and then we get there and the composer's out in the hall, and occasionally they'll say percussion, can the snare drum be less or something,
Yeah.
and we'll say okay, yeah, absolutely, no problem. But you don't really get the chance to always get that experience. And so after the concert, everybody's like thrilled with what happened, and we're getting a chance to talk about it and talk about the experience, talk about the live performance, talk about the recording session. We talk about the pieces, and it's just get a chance to like, it's like a big wad of gum or something, like just pack another person onto this composers conference wad.
I just think of like baseball players when they chew.
Right. Yeah. Just pop another piece in.
Oh God, that's great.
Because that's what it feels like. And then, or like it's, you pack it on, it's this, and everything's bigger. Like every year we get
That's
a bigger wad.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
But those are probably the things that because I think if I had to snap decision, it would be after concert hangs.
Yeah, those are great. Those after concert hangs, no question. Well, thank you. This has been great. This has been.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, I appreciate the time.
Thank you.